Welcome to Kidmissing TV. I'm your host, Angelina Wilson. This is the first case of Missing May. This is the case of Brenda Byman. Brenda was 12 years old, when she disappeared from British Columbia on May the 7th, 1961. They believed that she was staying overnight with a friend in Wilmer, British Columbia, and had gone hiking the next day with 4 teenagers, a 15-year-old girl and 3 boys. They are possible suspects in her case. I still don't have my new tabletop tripod, so I can't even breathe on this one. Someone dug deep into the case and quoted stories from the Globe and Mail and the National Post. And people called it fake news. It was already garnering some less than happy thoughts and comments. The title of one of the stories by journalist Eve Lazarus was entitled, 5 Kids Left for a Hike and Only 4 Returned. Okay. There are 4 theories. The first is that she died from exposure or was eaten by an animal. Brenda's family are convinced that her friends killed her and their parents hid the body. Brenda's friends and their families believe that Brenda's father killed her and then buried her body in a well on his property. The 4th possibility is that Brenda got into a vehicle driven by someone she knew or a stranger. It would explain why not a single trace of her, not a hair, a thread of clothing, nothing was ever found. Only one of the teens that was with her that day is still alive. They were actually forced out of their home area because of the case. The case is actually filed at the police department as missing believed dead. She was described as a shy, sweet girl. She was incredibly close to her family, including her siblings, brother Albert, sisters Audrey, Verna, and Doreen. She was especially doting of Albert. He was much younger than her. She would watch him as an infant, that sort of thing. She was staying with her grandmother, but a friend of hers in the area called her and said, come over and play a game with us. Spend the night with us. Meaning her and some other girls. So, I guess Grandma said it was okay, and she did. She was expected back at her grandmother's by 3 o'clock the following afternoon, which she never made. At around 2:30, Vivian and Edward split from the group, leaving Brenda alone with John and Elwood. Okay. It was one of the largest search in their valley's history. And their accounts conflicted somewhat with each other. Okay, one of the boys says he had sex with her twice and asked if another one of the boys could have sex with her. She said no and ran away, and they chased her. This is what they said. All three passed polygraphs 30 years later, so that doesn't mean a whole lot. And even police said it had been way too long to know. Excuse me. In the 1970s, three 10-year-old boys who wandered too far from their grandmother's home, so they were scared to tell what they had found a small human skeleton about 5 kilometers, so not very far, from where the kids were hiking, and it had been disturbed. So, it wasn't until 2001 that authorities would finally find out about. And they're hoping to compare her dental records. I don't know if they ever did. One of the trackers said, I don't think she was in Strawberry Draw, was the name of the place, one of the places we're hiking. And, sorry. Another tracker that was, tracking also said that. In 1961, he'd seen one of the Carson boys with their mother at the staging area at Munn Lake. By 8 a.m., the shake and sawdust pile in Barbara's farm was alight with flames. The tracker and his partner went to the pile and noted several shoe and boot prints around the 16-foot circumference pile, while also spotting another area burning on the hillside about halfway up. 2 hours later, he'd returned to the pile but found it too hot to approach. It never sat well with him. Excuse me. In 2006, a resident found a human skull in the water near the shoreline just north of the Bayshore condominiums in Invermere, which was right next to it where they were. No other remains were found when the area was searched by the Columbia Valley Search and Rescue Team. The skull was sent to a forensic anthropologist in Cranbrook, BC, for analysis so that its age, race, sex, and date of death could be determined. It's currently unknown if the skull washed ashore or was buried and later uncovered when the lake bank eroded. But it's noted the only open missing persons case at the time was Brenda's. In 2011, a woman named Margaret Porcina claimed Brenda's relatives had contacted her to say that Brenda had actually gone hiking at Munn Lake, not Lake Enid, and she was meant to be home by 4 p.m., not 3 p.m., like originally stated. She also referenced an article from the Valley Echo which stated Vivian had actually been questioned by investigators and had said that Brenda had run off around the time a hailstorm began, around 2 p.m. None of their statements line up at all. Her DNA, her family's DNA, I should say, and her dental records are in the database. Excuse me. You really can't tell what to believe because it took 30 years to even administer polygraphs, which aren't admissible in court because they're not accurate. Again, there are several sort of theories. Her mom passed away in 2016, by the way, in the case. Did John Carlson and Alward Godleen kill her? Their stories kept changing. They believe she was abducted because they believe she ran away from them and they heard a car. Some believe Brenda got lost in the woods and died of exposure. One theory was quickly discounted, which was that she was sent to Ontario and returned to the area years later under a new name. There is no evidence to support that she left the area, nor that she was in Ontario or other areas of BC, aside from a few unsubstantiated sightings. BC is British Columbia, by the way. Her father passed away in 1981 at the young age of 59 after suffering 4 heart attacks and undergoing a battle with lung cancer. According to the family, he never got over his daughter's disappearance and often spent his free time searching. Her brother suffers from anxiety because of her disappearance. Excuse me. Elwood has passed away. He said, if alive, she would be 72 years old now. She was only 12. This is a quote from her mom. Brenda was 6. And she said, "Don't worry, Daddy. I will wash all of Albert's diapers." Well, Ingvar, as a joke, bought her a little wash tub and scrub board. But Brenda was serious, and every day she came home and washed Albert's diapers with that little scrub board. And oh, she would be mad if I used the gas washer. She would say, "That's my job." She just loved Albert and would push him around in the carriage, saying it was her little brother. She was spending the weekend. She disappeared with my mother and Wilmer. And they get a call from a neighbor saying they were playing a game and they needed another player. Could Brenda come up? And her mother thought, oh, her grandmother, her mother's mother, thought it would be nice for her to be with other young people. Then later they called again saying that the game was going so well, could Brenda stay the night? And her grandmother again agreed. Here's another quote from her mom. Someone knows something. I spoke to the one boy and he admitted to me he seduced Brenda. But no one believed me and he wouldn't admit it after. There were so many rumors, so many lies. Everyone had a different story. All she wants, Hilda says, is to know before she dies what happened to her daughter. And that didn't happen. People don't understand that love is forever, said Albert Byman, the youngest of the Byman siblings. We'll never give up. We are not looking for vengeance, we are looking for closure. Albert said of his father, he died wondering, I really believe it killed him. After 4 heart attacks and then lung cancer, he died at 59. Here's another quote from Albert. I have had issues with anxiety my entire life. It has just been in the past few years I have understood through therapy that it all goes back to Brenda going missing. I remember that day well. We were picking her up in Wilmer from my grandma's and then going for dinner for Mother's Day, but she wasn't there. The big sister that adored him was gone, and his family would never be the same. He said, Dad never got over it. Imagine living in the same area as the people you believed had something to do with, or at least knew about, your daughter going missing and never being able to do anything about it. Yeah, and being blamed yourself. Just to add that to it. I don't think the police ever blamed him. She was a little girl. He was 17. She had turned 12 2 weeks prior. She was a baby compared to him. Why on earth would you try to have relations with a baby who's barely in puberty? I don't understand that. I do not have a phone number for this case, do I? Or do I? Let me look. Yes, I do. The detective said, quote, I believe Brenda met with foul play, and regardless of the time that has elapsed, Brenda is still a young 12-year-old girl who shouldn't be forgotten, and I won't forget. Oh, excuse me. Call the Columbia Valley RCMP, that stands for Royal Canadian Mounted Police Detachment, at 250-342-9292. That's 250-342-9292. Or if you wish to remain anonymous, you can submit tips via Crime Stoppers, 1-800-222-TIPS. That's 1-800-222-8477. Thank you so much for joining me. God bless you and have a wonderful rest of your day. Please subscribe. We're trying to get to 500 by Memorial Day. Bye, guys.